जी
ॐ स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। अथ लौकिकमङ्गलाचरणम्। या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापः निःशेषजाड्यापः। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद नीतीश। It's a great opportunity for all of us when Bharat is celebrating 25th year of independence. On this occasion, Bhavan's K.M. Munshi Center for Indology, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Delhi Kendra, has come forward to celebrate it with its academic endeavors, fulfilling the aims and objectives of its founder, Shri K.M. Munshi ji, who was a stalwart, a freedom fighter who was determined to pursue, to protect, to preserve, and promote Bharatiya Vidya.
इससे क्यों नहीं हो रही? स्पीकर से क्यों नहीं आ रहा?
It is, it was, it was decided a few months back to organize a series of webinars of Temples of India in collaboration with Destination Heritage. It's an NGO based in Bangalore, and its co-founder trustee and its founder trustee, Dr. Geeta U. Badikalaya, is cooperating with us. So the idea of building temples goes back to several millennia when devotion and contemplation inspired humanity to think that there is something beyond the material world. It created abodes for the divine to contemplate, to elevate one's chitta, to transcend, to offer prayers for the blessings and for the well-being, for doing punya, meritorious acts. They are for surrendering the self, leaving the ego behind, to calm the mind, receive paramount peace, be inspired for virtuous life, respect all, protect values and traditions. They strengthen our inner self. They developed as centers of learning, arts, dedication to society, meeting people, organizing satsangala, chanting prayers, performing rituals, and so on. The scientific aspects of Hindu temples is almost forgotten, unfortunately. Not actually, all of them were not meant only for offering prayers, but some of them were specially built for curing certain diseases. People tell about it, but others do not have faith in it. Ancient temples were centers of divine energy. They were built on special ley lines, which is a matter of experience and also research for the modern world to understand. In India, the temples are Hindu, built by Hindus, the Buddhists, the Jains, the Sikhs, the Parsis. All over the world, when we look at temples, the Greeks, the Egyptians built temples in their own way. The Jews built as promised land. Italians also built, but most of them did not survive because they had built it in perishable material. The Japanese housed Shinto and Buddhist deities together. The Chinese followed palace architecture. There's a difference in construction of temples. So I'm not going into details. So there is so much to talk about temples. So we have just organized a series of 10 talks in this year, coming to the conclusion in the next year in August. So when we visit a temple, grand gates and outermost walls or enclosures mark the point of interface between the sacred and the profane. That is why we gave the title to this series. So that keeps us away from the humdrum and the chaos of the modern world. They help us to release pressure and stress. These days, people ask, why should we go to temples? So, for them, I would say that they help to release pressure and stress to maintain mental health, well being. So, there is a lot that one has to experience, but one has to go with the feeling of surrendering the self. It can be a simple thatched roof hut, or it can be an ornately decorated, splendid monument built by the royal families, but the purpose is the same. Countless souls visit them to get solace, to get self satisfaction, transcendence, inner peace, and above all, experience meeting the divine, becoming one with him. No, who can be a better person to talk about this when our prince an author and also dedicated to the social cause. I request Dr. Geeta Vadikalaji to please introduce the princess.
Thank you, Dr. Sashi Balaji. Namaskara and my respects to the organizers of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Ashok Pradhanji, Shashi Balaji, Shuklaji, and Her Highness Princess Ashwati Tirunal Gauri Lakshmi Bai, learned scholars, and ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. At the outset, I thank profusely Professor Dr. Shashi Balaji, Dean of Bhavan's KK Munshi Center for Indology, on behalf of myself and the trustees of Destination Heritage for associating this 10-month-long Azadi Ki Amrit Divas program on Temple Series lectures, commencing with a talk from a royal scion of erstwhile Travancore. I also take this opportunity to request the chair, Sri A.B. Shuklaji of the Indian Knowledge Systems, Ministry of Education, Government of India, that besides creating awareness of our rich cultural heritage, to introduce the basics of indigenous medicine systems in school syllabus, as also introducing the students to our arts and crafts with interactions once in a month by which we give dignity and respect to our artisans, to give an impetus to the artisans considering their profession as an art form and not mere craft. We can start with the weavers and potters. If you mind, sir, you can definitely give this suggestion a push in the right direction. And I think the start of this program is the right impetus for you to please take it forward. We will be all of us, including Princess of Travancore, will be with you, sir, to take this movement forward and let us do something to enrich the knowledge system of our rich heritage. Princess Ashwati Tirunal Gauri Lakshmi Bai, a people's princess, hails from the lineage of great reformer kings of Travancore and Kerala. The Travancore royal family descended from the Waynard line of the Cheras and ruled over the Indian state of Travancore until 1947. She is the niece of Maharaja Chittira Tirunal Ramavarma, the last ruler of the state. She is the daughter of Maharani Kartiya Tirunal Lakshmi Bai and Colonel G.V. Raja of Punjar Palace. Her husband was late Sri R. Rajavarma of Palaikar Western Palace, Tiruvalla. An economics graduate, she is distinguished writer. Known for her scholarship, she has authored many books. Special mention is her frontline book on Sri Padmanabha Swami Temple, which is not only a treatise on the temple of Padmanabha, but it is a testament and of her abiding faith in her family deity Padmanabha. They call themselves the Dasas of Padmanabha. Incidentally, this book's 4 editions were published by Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. So it is now presently out of stock. I would request Dr. Sashi Balaji. There is so much of demand. She was here in Bangalore recently, and she brought about 43 books, which was sold like hotcakes. So I would request Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan to look into the printing of this wonderful book. Glimpses of Kerala culture, Tulsi Garden, and the recently authored book, History Revisited, whose first edition was sold even before it was formally launched, are some of her popular non-fiction books. It is in its second edition now. She is a poetess with 150 poems in English and has scripted for a Malayalam movie. She strongly believes in the power of education in shaping individuals. She is the recipient of 40 awards. She shared me her joy of receiving her 40th award yesterday, the Lalitambika Sahitya Award, which is a prestigious literary award in Kerala, and probably it will be next month that she will take possession of this award. She is a much sought after speaker at various prestigious forums, chairing sessions, keynote addresses, speakers at seminars, inaugural addresses from addressing the medical fraternity to performing arts, broadcast in AIR, and discussions. Her understanding of so many matters is broad based. She is the managing trustee of many charitable trusts and director in many family owned concerns. She is the director of State Bank of Travancore, now merged with the State Bank of India. She is director and trustee in Palace Control Trust for Charity. Having known her personally, she is a down to earth, benevolent princess, pious with a strong sense of humor. I must openly state that I'm indeed privileged to know you, Princess, and to thank you, Sashibala, once again to give me the honor of introducing her in this August series of lectures that is going to happen. Thank you so much, Dr. Sashibala ji and Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Geeta, for not only introducing me to Her Highness the Princess, but also all about her. The work that she has been doing, one has to put heart and soul into it. Without that, this much of work is not possible. So I request Her Highness, the Princess Ashwati Tirunal Gauri Lakshmibai ji, to kindly enlighten us on the topic Temple Tales of Erstwhile Princely State of Travancore. Please.
नारायणाखिल गुरो सरसीरुहाक्षा नादान्तवेद्य नवनीरदचारुदेह बालोऽस्म्यहं तव कृपामयि नित्यमस्तु श्रीपद्मनाभ मम देहि धरावलम्बम् Namaskaram to the entire August participants. I do not know whom to address first, whom to address next. Of course, Yashbala. I mean, Srimati Mara is there. Definitely, I suppose I have to address her first. And all of you, thank you for being here. I must admit first that I'm a slightly confused person. There seemed to be a slight doubt on who was speaking today earlier, but then that has been cleared. And Geeta has been a good friend of mine, so whatever she says, please take not with a pinch of salt, but the bag of salt. About me at least, not the other things about me. I have to, before I proceed to the subject, I must please allow me to make a few corrections because I cannot bask in glory which is not mine. First thing is I have not written anything for any film that has come wrongly in the YouTube or something, and that is there. And then with regard to my book History Liberated, it is History Liberated. The third impression is already in the market within a few months. Thank you for the congratulations offered to me on my latest award. That's my 42nd one, and I'm deeply grateful for that. Now, all the rest, I think I won't keep on correcting. I'm not, incidentally, I'm not a director of the bank now. I was 6 years, for 6 years, but no longer. It is past glory, not present. Now we will go back, we'll, I think, go straight to the topic. I feel a little hesitant addressing so many VVVIPs in all areas of activity, scholars, academicians, administrators, etc., etc., etc. As Geeta earlier said, I don't think academically I can ever measure up to any of you. So you will have to excuse whatever minuses that are there. Please tone down your parameters of excellence so that it will meet with my capacities. I'm very happy that Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan is spearheading this series, connecting with the independence of India. I always hope and pray that Indian independence would not just be a political independence, that we should not become economic slaves, we should not become slaves in many other ways while we hold on to our political independence. I'm sure we will go ahead by the grace of God, who is after all Bharata Bhagya Vidhata. But with His grace, let us hope that we will continue in a good way. Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, before I go on to my task assigned to me, just 2 words about that. Sri Munshi and Leelavati Munshi were personal friends of my uncle Maharaja Chitra Tirunal. And my grandmother Maharani Setu Parvatibai. And they have been friends of a family. And I remember as children seeing both of them come home for dinner. We still live in the same house. And grandmother bought a whole bedroom set, bedroom with cots and almara and everything, one whole new set for them when they were coming as guests when Sri Munshi and his wife came. And Mr. Ramakrishnan, so dear, a personal friend, guardian, guide to me personally also and to the family. And Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan has been kind enough to publish, to be the publisher, to be my boss for the Sri Padmanabha Swami Temple book, which is now coming to the 5th edition. Tulsi Galan and My Mighty Indian Experience. All these are Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan publications. With regard to the 5th edition of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, under Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's banner, Sri Padmanabha Swami Temple, printing has already started. The book will be out, hopefully by the grace of God, in maximum 1 month's time. It is already cleared and the process is very much in the way, in the pipeline. Coming to the temples of Travancore. Coming to the temples of Travancore, I may be pardoned if I just speak a few words generally on temple worship. Already, Srimati Bala has given a very fantastic presentation on it. When I was sitting and listening to her, I was really very much taken up by her expression and all that. But anyway, just a few sentences, a few pages, I would say, of what is my view on temple worship in Kerala. I'm skipping so many things because of the dart of time, but from the very early annals of creation, man felt the urge to acknowledge and revere with awe that which he felt was mightier than his might and above his control and beyond his comprehension. A power on which he could lay the responsibility for his prosperity, adversity, for the ups and downs inevitable in the process of living. Thus the early man worshipped the elements of nature like the sun, moon, rain, fire, thunder, lightning, water, and so on and so forth. the elements he could perceive and experience, but over which he had no command. The wheels of time rotated, and the nomadic man began to put his roots down in places, at least for certain lengths of time. He extended his homage to objects within his reach, like trees, shrubs, birds, animals, etc. Reptiles also, snake worship, serpent worship. All this was the natural outcome of the human mind to admit the existence of a supreme power, which could not be contained within his understanding, but which was the arbiter of his destiny, and as such to be placated by whatever act of worship he thought was required. With the passage of time, the wandering instinct of man was overtaken by his inclination to a stability of and settled life. Thus marked the start of groups of people, possibly sharing the same interests and views, and consequently habits, living within a specific area which became the villages. Earlier settlers too worshipped their gods in nature and animal, bird, and snake forms, like their ancestors, but began the worship of stones too, investing divinity in them. These were the forerunners of the idols of later times. The early man, perhaps unconsciously, gave the greatest philosophy to mankind by admitting the omnipresence of God, his all-pervading nature by which he is present in all created things, static or active. This omnipresence is perhaps one of the hallmarks of our Sanatana Dharma, where we acknowledge, accept, and adore everything. Civilization marched on, and buildings came to be put up, and man extended his idea by constructing a roof for his gods, whom he had started to visualize in his own familiar human form, but more often than not, with certain distinctive features and differences which would set them apart from the ordinary mortal race, incorporating the male, female, and child aspects apart from the old and familiar divinities. It is of significance to note that all these varied objects of devotion have stood the test of time and continue to be worshipped to this day. Thus, the temples and idols made of stone, clay, wood, granite, and later on of precious metals, singly like gold, silver, or copper, or in combination of 5 metals of Panchaloha, came into existence as ideal aids to concentration and as sacred abodes of the divine, and as divinity itself, enclosing within them the entire length of human emotions and aspirations. I do not want to go further and further into the temple earlier evolution of temples. I have done quite a bit on that, but I'm not going into it at all now. I will go straight away into the temples of Travancore. When you say Travancore existed, that is pre-linguistic states. When the authorities in their infinite wisdom decided to cordon off Bharat, Mahabharat, the subcontinent of India, on linguistic basis, creating linguistic states. Many states had their frontiers changed. Many had a lot of changes, even emotional, coming into them. Travancore, perhaps later Kerala, was perhaps one of the worst sufferers. We lost Kanyakumari district. Kanyakumari district with so many temples, so much of history, where every milestone stood witness to history or was history in the making. So much we lost. And that is a loss which still lingers in our old minds. So I purposely chose to speak on the temples of Travancore, not Kerala. Because the moment you say Kerala, Kanyakumari district is out of your orbit. And to think of a Malayalam Nadu without Kanyakumari is such a challenge. Starting with Kanyakumari Devi Temple at the southern tip of India, where the 3 oceanic sisters, the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea, and the Indian Ocean, hold their hands together the throb of their hearts, translating as hymns of praise to the arbiter of all destiny, Kanyakumari. From there onwards is the march of Travancore. Travancore, Thiruvidankura in our Malayalam language, Thiruvidankura, Sri Varum Koda, even earlier, Sri Varum Koda, or the land where Sri or Aishwaryam or prosperity reigns. And Sri, as you all know, is a synonym of Lakshmi Devi. And Lakshmi Devi is the power child of Mahavishnu or Sri Padmanabha. And all of Travancore belong to Sri Padmanabha Swami, the dynastic family deity of the house of Travancore. I have chosen just 2 temples today from the Travancore temples. And being a somewhat confused female myself, I did a last minute change, put another temple instead of another temple. So anyway, it's all going to be like an avial. We have a curry in our land which is called avial, which is a combination of so many vegetables and things like that. So this is going to be somewhat of a combination. Please forgive whatever lapses, lacunas, drawbacks which would necessarily manifest, and let us treat it with an indulgent outlook and a lenient ear. I'm going to talk first on a very small temple. That is the Saraswati Amman temple in Padmanabhapuram, the erstwhile capital of Travancore. This temple is within the confines of the fort of Padmanabhapuram, now in Kanyakumari district. And Padmanabhapuram, as I have just mentioned, was for long the capital of Travancore. This Saraswati Amman temple was not really a temple as such. It was more like a Thevaram, a family place of family worship. Now it has assumed the character of a small temple. Padmanabhapuram is a wonderful place, rustic beauty, rustic charm, the village atmosphere, and it has the backdrop of the Western Ghats. It is so wonderful to the eye, to the mind, as when if you just go to the Padmanabhapuram palace, the vibrations will conquer you. It is so very solid. Padmanabhapuram, the Saraswati Amman, Saraswati, of course, as we all know, is top with regard to learning, wisdom, etc., etc. Many years ago, many centuries ago, in the Chola land, in South India, there were the Cholas, the Cheras, the Pandyas, they were all big dynasties, many times not very friendly with each other. And we are of Chera descent. Cholas were the neighbors of Cheras. The Chola king, many years ago, they say around about 9th century BC, in his court, there was a very well-known poet by name Kamban. Kamban was very, very scholarly. He was he had a very good command of language and letters. But the weakness of youth, unfortunately, conquered him, and he felt, should we say, love for the princess of the Chola dynasty, Shola Kulavalli, or the Valli or flower of the Shola Kulam, of the Chola Kulam Chola dynasty. That is her name, Shola Kulavalli, the princess. The king came to know of this, and of course he was not amused. He was not at all amused. But in those days, especially, learned men were treated with respect, and he had the double advantage of being a Brahmin. And the king decided to exile him from Chola land, from Chola territory. He was exiled. He just crossed over. The next was Chera. So he entered the Chera dynasty, Chera land, Chera terrain, and somebody informed the Kulashekara Perumal, or the king of the Cheras at that time, that a very learned man has come and he has been uh, exiled from the neighboring Chola land. So the king was somewhat, perhaps his curiosity was awakened or whatever it may be. He had someone brought to him, and he said, "All right, I will make you a poet in our court. You sit here in our court, and you may write poetry, bring out masterpieces in literature, etc." I suppose he didn't say anything about the princess, or he didn't have a princess in the home. I don't know. Anyway, that part we do not know. So, but then Kambar, as he continued, he had a complete change of character, change of mindset, and he became very, very spiritual. He decided he would write the Ramayana. Ramayana has been written in many places, many languages by many great people. Kamban decided that he would also write a Ramayana. And he wanted an idol for his inspiration. And a Saraswati idol was made of Panchaloha. And he put the idol before him as inspiration and as witness. And he wrote this entire Ramayana, which later on became very, very famous and still continues to be famous as the Kamba Ramayana. Once he finished this, like many great people, they know when their end is coming. And he felt that he did not have much time ahead of him. He went to the Kulisekara Perumal and he said that once he moves on, this idol should not be lost to humanity. It is such a powerful idol. Like the power charges contained in it are very, very great. So it should be not be lost to humanity. And he handed over this idol to the Kulisekara Perumal and told him, I am entrusting this in your hands. Please keep it safe. And like that, this particular idol came into the dynasty. Wherever the Kulisekara Perumals went, wherever the shifting fortunes took them, they shifted the capital to many places. It was not Patnapuram at that time. Patnapuram came later. And wherever they went, they carried this idol with them. And Navaratri, as you know, Dasara as it is called in certain other places, is very important to Devi. Finally, when they put their roots in Patnapuram, a little shrine was built for her and she was installed there. But it was not a Prana Pradishta. It was not a Sthira Pradishta. And this particular idol is so beautiful, so powerful, so benign. She is not fierce, she is very benign and full of love. And wherever the kings went for Navaratri, they took her to wherever they went, that is Mavelikara or Chenganur, wherever, and celebrated Navaratri. In the time of Maharaja Martanda Varma the Great, who was the architect of modern Travancore, who consolidated Travancore till the reorganization of states, and who dedicated the entire Travancore to Sri Padmanabha Swami as Tripadidanam in the 1700s. He decided, because of his adoration to Padmanabha Swami, that he wanted to be near the temple. And it was not possible for him to travel from Padmanabhapuram to Thiruvananthapuram every day. It was too far. And he wanted to shift the capital to Thiruvananthapuram. But before it could be fully done, he moved on to the feet of Sri Padmanabha Swami, and it was left to his successor, and an equally illustrious successor he was, Karthik Tirunal Ramavarma, popularly known as Dharmaraja, to do so. So when he shifted the capital to Thiruvananthapuram, he wanted to bring Saraswati Amman with him. But you know, when the idols are changed, their astrological predictions are done and all that, and she did not want to leave Patnapuram and come. So he made a submission to her that wherever my family may be, for Navaratri, for Dasara, we will bring you with all honor to our home and worship you, honor you during Navaratri, the entire Navaratri 9 days. It is a great blessings of above that despite the fact that today Kanyakumari belongs to Tamil Nadu, 2 linguistic states, 2 states, even today the procession, the grand procession from Patnapuram comes every year. It is a cultural event to the people of Trivandrum, Thiruvananthapuram, and it goes on. And the crowds that come, despite Corona, despite everything, COVID, everything. Only thing is, because of COVID, the last 2 years, the grandeur of the procession had to be mitigated to an extent. And instead of elephant bag, she comes in a palanquin, accompanied by Kumara Swami from Kumara Kovil and Kundalini Shakti from Suchitra. And and she comes to our palace in the fort near the Navaratri Mandapam there, near the Padmanabha Swami temple eastern entrance, and she is worshipped in a very beautiful mandapam, very beautiful. I wish that all of you would come once during Navaratri. There's no point in my trying to explain. You have to actually witness it. And the music festivals are conducted every day. Now, all the 9 days. And then she goes back after Vijayadashmi, 2 days after Vijayadashmi. Dwadashi, she returns. Vijayadashmi, Ekadashi, Dwadashi. Dwadashi, she returns to Patnapuram, and Trivandrum waits again for the next year and for her and for Kumaraswamy and Kudinamanda to come back. This particular idol is made of Panchaloha. She has 4 arms. The upper arm has the chakra, right hand. The left hand holds the Amrita Kalasha. The right lower hand has the Grantha, has the Chin Mudra. The left lower hand holds the Grantha. She's a small idol, only this much in height, small and very, very beautiful. And she's so powerful that people come there for Vidya, for Ishta Siddhi, and invariably they go very, very satisfied. Very, very satisfied. I remember still of a very famous dancer. I will not mention her name. Almost all the famous dancers in India have danced for her as in acts of devotion, not in terms of money. Starting with Kamala Lakshman, who was Kumari Kamala, Vaijendimala Bali, Bala Saraswati, Swapna Sundari. I mean, it goes on, the list goes on. Chitra Vishweshwar, almost all the big names, Gopika Varma, so many of them, they have all danced on the mandap. And it's still a huge waiting list to dance. Once when she went back, she went back, her shrine, only Saraswati Amman is there with the Narasimha Murti and Vedavyasa Bhagavan on either side, small vigrahas, and there is a Shiva in the Pragara, but nothing else. It's a very small, simple, and architecturally, there's nothing much to say about architecture or sculpture. So very, very Spartan shrine. But the location is fantastic. Once there was a great shock when the priest went and opened the temple in the morning. The vigraha, the idol, had disappeared. Somebody had stolen Saraswati Amman. It created a huge panic, not only in Patnapuram, but in our palace also, where we were desperate. We don't know what to do. Saraswati Amman has gone. Sometimes, even things which we think negative have their own uses. A sudden lightning bell came in Tamil Nadu the next day. Lightning bell, by which all transport came to an standstill. No buses could run, no cars could run, everything came to a standstill. We had immediately contacted the highest police authorities in Tamil Nadu, and investigation was going on. Idol had not been discovered. The next day after the ban, a little boy, a village boy, was going to buy milk. He was walking through the fields of Patnapuram, and he was going to buy milk for the home, and he found a dirty parcel lying near the road, and he just kicked it. And it hurt his leg because it was so heavy. He got frightened. He called his father. Father came running. Then everybody didn't know what this parcel was. They dared not look at it. They called the police. Police came and opened it. It was the idol of Saraswati Amma, wrapped up in a dirty old cloth, possibly taken off from the front headgear of an elephant, wrapped up in the cloth, and possibly because the burn came, they could not take the idol out, they had abandoned it. And so she came back. It was such a rejoicing that she reappeared, and our family offered to teach this boy however much he wanted to learn at our expense, palace expense, to express our gratitude. All those things are separate. And anyway, she is there and she comes back every year. It is such a historical, art oriented, and above all, spiritual experience. Saraswati Amman of Padmanabhapuram. Incidentally, though the temple is now at the HRNDC of the Tamil Nadu government, the Padmanabhapuram Palace still continues to be part of Kerala. And so we are able to do many things there. Now, coming to the second temple, I was having a confusion whether I should talk on the Sri Varaham temple in Thiruvananthapuram or the Surya temple, Adityapuram temple in Kottayam district, central Travancore. Maybe I will make them both very brief and just mention the two so that somebody may know that there is a temple like that. Both are unusual. Sri Varaham temple is dedicated to Varahamurti, Matsyakurma Varaha, the third incarnation, as we normally say. So Bhagavatam has its own way by which it is sort of listing the incarnations. But normally we say third incarnation is Varahamurti. Now, it is not very usual to have a Varahamurti consecration. And here it is Sri Varahamurti. Sri is not the respect prefix, it is Lakshmi Devi. Sri Varahamurti is Varahamurti with the goddess, which is even more unusual. Of course, there are temples in Tamil Nadu which do have, but by and large, if you take the tally, such temples are minimum. This particular temple has merited mention in the 12th century Syanandura Purana Samuchayam, Anandapura Varnanam, Keralotpati, the Madhulakam records of the Sri Padmanabha Swami temple. So at least from 12th century, before 12th century, it existed. Maharaja Martanda Varma, 1729 to 1758, the architect of modern Travancore, has done a lot for the temple, etc., etc. I'm not going into all those things there. And I will go to the Sthala Purana of it. Oral tradition was that when the Pandavas went off on a pilgrimage after the Mahabharata war, they traveled all over Bharata. When they came to Thiruvananthapuram, Arjuna, the Pandava prince, no, actually, I'm sorry, it was not after the war, but it was during their 1 year of exile after Vanavasa. They came when they were in exile, they came, not after that. And he decided that he would wanted to offer some homage to Varahamurti. He shot an arrow into the land, created a pond. And this pond, which is the Varahatirtha, is as one of the 108 sacred tirthas of Malayalam Nadu. But before that, it is said that a pig, Varaham, appeared in the fort area, a little away from the Padmanabhaswamy temple, and with his bow he dug up a lot of mud. Why he dug up the mud, I do not know. He dug up the mud and water came, and after digging up this mud, he just took off, rushed off and went and sat in a particular place and this pig was Varaha. Varaham is a somewhat unsophisticated term. So he dug up And in unsophisticated language, the Mithranandapuram tank, which was created by him, is known as Panni Kuttiya Manna, the manna or soil which was bored by the pig. And after creating this pond, which is very closely associated with the Patnam Swami temple, he went off outside the walls and stationed himself as Varahamurti, and the temple came subsequent to that. There are 3 idols there. There are so many things there. I do not want to go into all those details. Structurally, it has its own special features. The pond itself is very sacred, and it's got a small mani mandapam in it, a little mandap there, which is so beautiful. And only thing I can tell you, which is which is a little very unusual, is that on the ceiling, where there are the Ashtadikpalakas and Brahma, many temples have that, but here Brahma in the middle and the Ashtadikpalakas around in wood carving, but here in the middle, Brahma is seated on a swan. That is very unusual, very, very unusual. And Varahamurti has the 3 idols. He has the Mula Pratishta Bimbam, he has the Shiveri Bimbam, and the Shiveri Bimbam joins with the Patnama Swami temple deities on Arata. They have this, the Aratas on the same day, and this in Painguni Masam, April Masam Arat in the Patnama Swami temple, which is a concluding day of the Patnama Swami temple, Painguni Utsava, 10 days. We have an Alpasi Utsava also 10 days in Tulam, November, October, November. But during this Arata, they also join as Kudi Arat, means they go along with the Patnama Swami temple procession. Varahamurti is one of the Kudi Arata deities. And there is one silver, special, very silver idol of, which is very, very new, very, very recent, maybe around about 2004. That this idol, which is about 18 kilos of silver, was made by a devotee called Venkataraman in Chennai. He was Kerala man, Trivandrum man, but he shifted to Chennai. He is very much alive, very much associated with temples and all that. And he had a dream in which Varahamurti said, "Make an idol for me." He woke up and then he thought about it, and then he said, after all, a dream, never mind. And then when he came to Thiruvananthapuram, went for worship in the temple, the first thing the priest asked was, "Why don't you make a silver Varahamurti idol?" He was so taken aback by that he immediately went home and he had the idol made and submitted, and it is used on very special occasions. Varahamurti temple is extremely popular in Thiruvananthapuram, and very, very popular. And Thiruvananthapuram has a very big advantage, since we are on temples. Out of the 10 incarnations, Thiruvananthapuram has temples dedicated to 9. Only Kurmam is absent. Maybe one day, if Bhagavan so wills, that will also come. That is very rare for a city to have so all the other temples. So please come to Thiruvananthapuram, visit all of them. Coming to the Surya temple, that is in Kottayam district, Adityapuram temple. A Nambudiri Brahmin was sitting in deep contemplation when Surya Bhagavan figure appeared before him, and he felt the heat. He woke up out of meditation, and this Aditya temple was built there according to the vision he had. And when the consecration came, nobody could go near. It was so intense, only he could go. And even today, it is the same Nambudiri family which continues to worship there as the pujaris. And it is a very small temple, but very unusual, very special. And it has a Durga Devi also manifested in the dream and brought. And she is the only other main Upadeva that are inside the temple. And it is this temple is very famous for dealing with physical ailments. Many people go there and pray, especially skin problems and other things. And there is a thing called Rekta Chandanam. I don't know what it is in English. And that is it's sandalwood. Sandalwood, only the pieces of sandalwood are kept there. And people go, they take the sandalwood, place it there and pray, give whatever money they wish. for the sandalwood offering. And they have a lot of very positive results because of that. And it is indeed very, very rare. The Sun Temple of Konark is there, but it's not a live temple. Here it's a live temple. And it is very, very, very rare that temples dedicated to the sun god, live temples are present. This is one of them. I'm purposely giving you very curtailed, very limited nutshell presentation of these temples because each of them would go on and on and on. And you are really not interested in hearing about the structure, about the architecture, unless there is something very, very special, like the Varahamurti Brahma on the swan and things like that. So that's why I'm sort of cutting it down. As you know, if I had taken temple like Shivjindram, where would we start? Where would we end? So much is there in every way. So that's why I did not. I thought I'll take a less known temples and chose these less known in comparative basis. They are very well known in their own areas, but maybe not on a pan-India level. And I think I would call it a day because I don't want to talk anymore on the subject because I know my limitations of brevity. Once I start on something, maybe I'll go on and on and on. And I do not want, you see, when these such webinars come or Google comes, sometimes the people who are sitting do not know they are on the screen. I have seen somebody playing on the mobile, not today, but earlier once. Somebody is playing on the mobile, somebody is going off to sleep. They don't realize that they are being seen. But here now I can only see a few of you, including Chief Coordinator himself, and a few others only here, so I have no idea what the reaction is. But I think it is enough that I speak this much, because it's the beginning after all, and we don't want to. And I can tell you the temples of Travancore, they are a legacy in themselves. They are wealth in themselves. And any temple, it is very difficult through explanations, through verbal communication, to bring to you the worth of those temples. You have to experience. It cannot be explained. You have to experience. Then only you can understand. And one very happy thing is, at least in Kerala, temple worship, its importance, its attraction is going up. More and more people are becoming aware of the importance of temple worship. More and more people are going, and the temple culture is definitely going up despite all other obvious adversities. That is a very great thing. I thank you, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. I thank the patience of the Chief Coordinator himself. One big problem with me is that I forget names very soon. My mother had told me, don't mention somebody by name if you can't, but never call somebody by a wrong name. So I don't want to repeat any mistake which might have happened today also. So that's why I'm just being very, very safe and saying coordinator. I definitely do not want to be called such a charming man, such a charming gentleman by a wrong name. So I can call him Prince Charming, but I'm not going to call him by a wrong name. So like that, and of course Geeta. Geeta is always Geeta after all. Yes, Madam Bala. Thank you all very much for your patient listening. And I would request you that not anybody say a word of thanks, because I'm not satisfied with my own presentation, but because of certain constraints, even of time, because I found when I took up the thing, I found it is very difficult to cut short anything. So unless you really cut it short. So that is what I had done. So there are definitely lacunas in it, in the presentation. Please bear with me. And in contrast, the others will shine. So let us hope so. Thank you so much. All the best of luck to Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. and to each and every one of you, Geeta. And I hope, as he said, that will come up with regard to propagating the culture and our traditional art forms, our traditional local heroes, everything, that we will have a rebirth through Bharati Vidya Bhavan. And you have already made the request. And in Sanatana Dharma, a gentleman does not say no to a lady. So he will not tell you no. So you are safe that way. Thank you, and may God bless you. And I invite all of you to the God's own country, Kerala. Please come. Please visit whatever temple is possible and go back elevated and satisfied. Namaskar.
Namaskar, namaskar, Princess. We are really grateful to you for taking us to a pilgrimage to the land of the gods, to the temples. So, telling us so much about the unusual, rare temples. India is really has given a temple culture to the world. I always tell people that before Indian culture reached the other countries, what they were having, they were tomb cultures. What they were constructing were tombs. But as soon as Indians reached there and Indian culture was reached there, then the whole energy of the imperial families was turned to temple building in place of tomb building. So it's really great. And I don't know what to say, because you have given us in this short and cutting down, curtailing your speech, but you have given us so much of information in such an interesting way that I wish all these stories should reach to every house. We should tell children at least about it. Children will be fascinated to know about these stories, about the story of Saraswati, the Royal Palladium. So much is to be taken. I have taken some notes, but I don't want to take so much of time. But I'm really grateful to you talking about the Sun Temple, the Martanda, the Adityapuram, the Shivarama Temple, the other temples of Travancore, especially the Saraswati Temple. It's really great. Even we do not know about all these stories. They are so important. They are not just stories. That is history. And history told in the form of stories, as we worship a Shakti in the Vyakti form. So idol is small or big, but it is the Shakti that, and we realize it. We can realize that we can feel the Shakti only once we surrender to it. We feel that, oh, this is the power. So when we feel the power, then we realize the energy. And I really tell you, I don't want to just go beyond this, but when I was a year and a half before, I was there in Padmanabha Swami temple and to go for the puja. There was not much time given because of the crowd there, but still I could feel the energy, and I still can feel the vibrations that I had there. Really, the tears coming down. Really, when I feel the energy, I really feel it. I'm really thankful. I'm really grateful to you, and we will request you further for more talks, more inspirations, more knowledge. So because the way you are telling history is very unusual. It's so interesting that then nobody will say history is a boring subject. So I wish to bring this knowledge to our future generations. Means that people, those who are children now, the kids, they will really enjoy it, and we also. Even I'm enjoying it. So I'm full of this. I can't say what kind of feelings do I have, but really grateful to you. Now I request Sri A.B. Shukla ji, Chief Coordinator of the Indian Knowledge Systems.
Excuse me, Dr. Sashibalaji, there is one question which we can ask the
Before,
princess.
okay.
Yes. Can I read
Okay,
out the
please.
question? It is from
Dr.
one.
Dharma. Yeah, Dr. Dharma. Dr. Dharma, please ask your question.
No, no, she didn't ask. It is
Huh?
one Ganesh Shivaswamy.
Okay.
So
So
shall I
she
read
has
out?
raised her hand. She
So
has
shall I
just
read out
raised
this
her hand.
question?
Yeah, please. One by one we can take.
Yeah. So he says, "Thank you for an exceedingly interesting lecture. I am happy you spoke about the rare Vahana associated with Varaha. I would like to ask, what is the Vahana of Saraswati in Padmanabhapuram? The sun. The reason I ask is because I wonder what inspired Raja Ravi Varma to associate the peacock with Saraswati rather than the Hamsa.
Ganesh would ask it. I'm not surprised. I was just wondering what Ganesh was going to do, what he had in store for me.
He
What
would have
happened-
asked himself, but he has again gone to court and he just said, please read out on my behalf.
No, I'm here. I'm back here. But anyway, thank you for asking.
Oh, okay, okay.
He's
Ganesh.
very much there. What have I done against you, Ganesh?
Oh,
Well, anyway, as far as this Saraswati Amman is concerned, normally Saraswati Devi, Vahanam is the swan and all that. Now, this Saraswati Devi, she does not have a particular, no Vahanam is associated with her because the temple was a Tevaram. So there was no flag mast with the Vahana Devata and all that. And it is the main Vigraha itself, is not a Shivedi Vigraha. It's not a Utsava Vigraha which is coming from there. It is the main Mula Vigraha. And it is not a Pratishtha, it's a, Pratishtha which is not firm, which can be removed. And as such, she has no Vahana as such. But Saraswati has got Vahana, that is a different thing. But this particular Saraswati Devi, there no particular Vahana has been, she comes on elephant back.
Am I permitted to add a line to this? You see, Princess, you talked about the 4 arms of the goddess Saraswati. That is Chakra, Amrit Kalasha, Grantha, and is it the
Chinmudra.
Varad Mudra?
No,
Is it the
Chinmudra.
Chin Mudra, okay, this is Tark Mudra. So, what I feel is Chakra is for the royal power, Chakra represents the royal power, Amrita Kalasha is for the society, and Grantha is, of course, Vidya, and the Tark is for the Tark Mudra for learning, for understanding, for discussion, for Shastrartha. Is it right?
They say in our part of the world, the Chinmudra, it is the Jivatma, Paramatma one, the ultimate Aham Brahmasmi, ultimate Veda Vakyas, where the Chinmudra represents the union of the Jivatma and Paramatma. That is what is normally said here, but I suppose in the Sanatana Dharma is open for interpretations, so interpretation
Yes.
definitely can be there.
Yes. Because in life we need all kinds of power. We need intellectual life, we need power, we need political and administrative power, and also the power of the intellectual, the political and administrative, and also the third power is the financial power. So I think in many of the vigrahas, I see that different kinds of powers are there, and we worship them to gain that power. Shakti power. When we offer prayers with the heart and soul, then the Shakti is there. Not without that.
Yes.
As you said, we are dasas of Padmanabha Swami. So thank you very much. Any other question, please?
Yes, I will just read out another one from Chandra's Food Delights. They're all from Bangalore. Thank you so much, Princess, for the detailed explanation of Palguni Utsav and the Varaha Murthy temple. Also, many thanks about the Atityam of Saraswati Amman temple of Padmanabhapuram. The Sun temple of Kottayam also I heard first time being a Malayali. We will definitely visit these 3 temples, and thank you once again, Princess. So over to you, Shashi ji. Now there are no more questions, and these 2 happen to be my friends also. So I took the liberty of reading it on your behalf.
Thank you, Gita ji.
Please ask her next time she comes to Kerala to visit those temples. She would be very much delighted, I feel.
And also, Princess, I share the pain with you of linguistic division of India. It should not have been done. So may I request our chairperson today, Shri A.B. Shuklaji, who is a former member of National Monuments Authority of India, which got him acquainted with the monumental artifacts and architectural heritage embedded in Indian culture depicted through monuments. He is the honorary president of Indian Council of Astrological Sciences, and for him, Jyotish is a self-elevating science and a means of fulfilling of life purposes. He has decoded and explained the genesis of many fundamental astrological principles from Bhagavad Gita, Vedas, Upanishads, and other scriptures. Event time prediction is also a result of one such research. He has also come up with some pioneering new concepts like the planet that shows the impact of past life, nakshatras that define normal principles. His lectures on Vastu have been compiled in the form of a book. Also, the CVA America conferred upon him the highest title of Jyotish Brihaspati. He is also a recipient of the title of Jyotish Martand and Jyotish Gita Tattvajnana from ICAS. So, with this few words about his introduction, and also with the future projects that we are going to take under his also guidance and his support and all this, I invite him to please deliver the presidential address. Shri A.B. Shukla ji.
यस्मिन् सर्वे यतः सर्वे यः सर्वे सर्वतस्य यः यस्य सर्वमयो नित्यं तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः. Princess Gauri, Dr. Sashibala, Geeta ji, Dr. Sashi Prabha, Nitish Bharadwaj ji, who delivered such a beautiful Mangalacharan, and friends. First of all, I would like to say that I totally agree with Princess when she says about the evolution of temple. I have been in the tribal areas of Andamans, tribal areas of Arunachal, and there I have seen the remotest corner of the state, where normal human beings don't go. There the tribals are still worshipping huge hills, ponds, trees, and of course snakes. That is everywhere, in every nook and corner of India, and even in Japan and China I have seen people still worship snakes. So that concept totally agreed. And when we go to certain caves where 20,000, 25,000 year old paintings are there, you can still identify the worshipping of snake and sun, moon, etc. This is very much there. So as the people started setting down, the concept of worship that came. However, I have got little difference of opinion about Sakar and Nirakar, which Pradhanji raised the point. And I request Dr. Shashi Prabha to help me on this, because what I have read from Vedas, in Ajurved, they define that Param Purush in the Sakar form. They clearly say, Chandrama Manso Jata, from his eyes came out, his manas, the Chandrama came out. Chakshu Surya Vajat, from Chakshu, the eyes, the sun came out. Chotat Vayush Pranas, Mukhat Agni Rajayat. So that they are describing that Param Purush Sakar form. So at least the Vedic form, the Vedic period, this Sakar form has come. Of course, they might have started with Nirakar Bhakti, with Yajan, etc. But somehow during Vedic period itself, the God as Sakar form was being conceived. And therefore only the system of statues, the murtis and temple must have come. Normally people quote one mantra from Ayurveda, they say, that's from Ayurveda, yes. Nattasya pratima asti. He doesn't have a pratima. But, and once again, I hope Dr. Sashi Prabhu will agree with me. Here, the pratima word has been used for pratiman. Nattasya purusasya pratima pratiman bhutam kinchit vidyate. That means there is nobody who is parallel to him, at par with him. He is peerless. But he does have a Sakar form. And for that Sakar form, the people kept on thinking in what manner we can perceive him, think him, and worship him. As Princess said, they started with sun, moon, huge bodies, plants, shrubs, trees, snakes, and then slowly came upon the human form. Whether as a goddess or god, whatever it was, but it concept came from there only. Once they believed there is superpower, and from that superpower, the sun and moon have been created. As I said earlier, Chandrama Manso Jata Chaksho Surya Jayat. Everybody knows it. And it is from Vedas only. So that means this human form of the Param Purush was already there. And not only this, when they thought of the sub chakras in the body, this temple construction is totally based on that. Where our Muladhar is, there they have put their Gopuram. And where Ajna Chakra comes, there they have put their Garbhagriha something. So that way, the human form, the temple, and the Murti all are joined. What we need to do some more research on this to bring it to certainty in what manner it developed. Because what I notice, there are two types of temples in India. One whose are on the top of the hills, and those which are on the plains and some in midway. The concept very clear. In case you are going to temples which are on the top of the hills like Kedarnath, Amarnath, don't stay there. Go visit and come back immediately. But in case you are visiting Somnath, you must stay one night. Concept very clear. Where you are on the top of the hill, where snow and all ecology is there. In case you are going to stay there, you are going to disturb the ecology, the entire environment, the climate. Don't just do that. Immediately come back. But what we did, if we have to go to Somnath, we shall go in the morning, have a darshan and come back. Whereas concept was, you must stay there at least one night. But in case you are going to Kedarnath, simply have darshan and immediately come back. Because if you stay there, you should disturb it. And what we did, we created hotels, resorts near Kedarnath. We disturbed nature. And in turn, in 2013, nature disturbed us. It disturbed everything except Kedarnath temple. And by coincidence, in India, mostly we have got temples which are east facing or west facing. Very few temples are there which are south facing. And Kedarnath is one of them. That means there was a detailed study about the place, about the climate of that area, about other things connect that area, and then they constructed temples. You can Nataraja temple, Dakshinamurti, Rangaraja, they're all south facing, depending on their particular location. At the same time, their system, their technique, and their knowledge so vast that even today we cannot think of how they conceived all such things. Like Elora's Kailash temple, how they started cutting from top and came down, and beautiful tunnels, channels, pillars, everything there. Today, even we cannot think of doing such thing. Brihadeshwar temple, no foundation, it is stable. So that means there was a fully developed science of temple architecture itself. Having a full knowledge as to what architecture should differ from north and south, east and west. And that is why South Indian temples slightly different from North Indians. If you go to East, temple slightly different. This Kedarnath temple, this has been buried in snow for 400 years. And when snow was removed, it came out intact. No damage. How? This was the particular technology we are yet to learn. So my emphasis is, today, instead of trying to go this microbiology and micro things, let us go back first and see what we have already got. How they created such beautiful things. What was marvelous things. How could they conceive the planning. Kedarnath even today is going so difficult. How they have taken in that area, that time, in those terrains, in those conditions, heavy stones and constructed, which is standing till today. Similarly, other temples. It's unfortunate because of so many attacks. Our libraries have been destroyed. We don't have information about those techniques. Nalanda, Takshila, Vikamshik, all have been destroyed. So the knowledge contained there about temple architecture almost lost. The time has come to revive this architecture first. Once we understand the temple architecture, it shall be very easy for us to understand the modern technology and connect with the past and do still better things. As Princess rightly said, we must go to remote areas like Saraswati Man temple and see how they created such a thing. Padmanabh Swami temple and other such temples. So we need to study this in detail. Here we have taken as a project temple architecture separate than the other architecture. We may study, and of course we are studying the architecture of the forts, palaces, but first we must have full information about the temple architecture. Still, we cannot think of in Somnath. We have seen arrow. They say in case keep on going, there shall be no landmass in between. Straight away shall the other part of the world. How could they think of that time? Because Somnath temple is very, very old. But they conceived at that time. That means we are still groping in the dark. We think we have become very modern. But as a matter of fact, we are still groping in the dark. When I visited Padmanabh Swami temple, I was amazed to see what energy is there. I kept on studying for 20 minutes. Ultimately, people said, move. You have what darshan, you have been studying here for the last 20 minutes in this corner, what for? I said, this is not enough. So much energy there. I may keep on studying here for the whole day. It's not over. So that sort of situation they could create there. That vibration. We are at to create. So time has come. And as Gita was saying, we must bring it in the textbook for children. Of course, our children must know the history of temples, history of our way of life, whether it's as a potter or as a weaver. Time has come. And I assure all of you, whatever we can do in little time, whatever I've got at my disposal, I shall be doing my bit. And rather, I seek cooperation all of you. You give me more information, I shall compile and put it. To submit to the government. So with these words, I finish my talk because Swamiji 12:30. Some people must be waiting for their lunch, and they, as this Shukracharya says, Chudha Turanam Balam na Buddhi. The lunch is approaching, people are not willing to listen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shri Avi Shukla ji. So is there any question? Anybody wants to know anything? Or should I just... Anybody is there?
Yeah, I will just add something to
Yeah,
what
please.
Shukla ji said. See, he was saying that with all the planning and development and the architecture of our temples, instead of going into micro, we should go into learning the techniques and apply it to the modern architecture. I would like to add that in Japan, there is the very famous Shinto temple of the mother goddess of Isis. So every 15 to 20 years, the temple is dismantled so that the present architects and builders know how it was built earlier. So exactly the technique is again made, and they keep the tradition of the age-old knowledge going forward. So I think something on these lines we can also think, Shukla ji. I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Please, Professor Shashi Prabha ji.
जी नमस्ते
Ji, namaste.
normal respected chairperson Dr. Shashi Balaji and the distinguished audience. I am very thankful to Shashi Balaji for organizing this important webinar. And normally after the chairperson's remarks, no comments or question answers are done. But since the chairperson himself named me for responding, I'll just say briefly because the presidential remarks have already been made. This is not the place to have a discussion on the topic of Sakar and Nirakar because this was specifically on temple architecture, and that is not my area of specialization. I am from the background of philosophy, from Vedic philosophy. I just want to say that the idea of personification was very much there in the Vedas. Why to quote Chandrama Manaso Jata? We have the very famous Purusha Sukta verse, Brahmanasya mukham asid bahu rajanyah kritah. So the idea of personification is there, but the idea of temple worship was not there. The idea of Sakar worship was not there. And the idea of multiplicity is ingrained in Vedic view. Rigveda itself says, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. So that is, I think,
That much only.
my point.
I want to confirm on this thing only.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
जी थैंक यू जी धन्यवाद जी she very rightly said because personification is there. I did my PhD thesis on 12 Vedic deities as they are depicted in Japan, and still they are worshipped in thousands of Shingon monasteries. So it's a group of Vedic deities, and I did the comparative study of their forms, their manifestations in Japan, and the descriptions starting from Vedas coming to the later texts. So it's there in the Vedas.
This first time the personification was
Yeah,
there.
it is there. So I very right. And Sakar and Nirakar in Bali, there is a tradition that they worship the gods in Nirakar form, but they build temples. So they have a temple, for example, in there are many temples in Bali, but the seat is empty because they
Excuse me.
worship in Nirakar.
We in India, we have that Chidambaram temple.
Yes, of course.
Where there is
Yes, of
no
course.
deity.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Correct.
So thank you very much. So thank you, Princess Ashwati Tirunal Lakshmibai Gauriji. We will be again and again troubling you. And India is one because of Dharma, because of knowledge, because of Vedas, because of Upanishads, because of all the literary heritage, because of the temples. You see, when you go to Shuklaji, you mentioned about going to Kedarnath, Badrinath, etc. When you go to Badrinath, Kedarnath, when I went there, I found there are more South Indians who came to pilgrimage to Badrinath, Kedarnath than the North Indians. So it's a common heritage. India is one because of this heritage, and going to pilgrimage to the northernmost part of India or the southernmost part of India
May I
is
just
common.
interrupt for a minute?
Ji,
May I
please.
just interrupt for a minute? But the Badrinath, the Badri Narayan holds in one hand the kindi, which is a typical Kerala vessel with a spout, and the ravel
Please,
of and the ravel of
South
Badrinath,
only.
the
Please,
priest, is
South.
always a South Kerala Nambudiri Brahmin, till recently selected and nominated by the Maharaja of Travancore.
Yes.
Possibly because Badri was consecrated by Shankaracharya, Adi
Yes.
Shankara, who was very much of our land. But till recently, the Ravel nomination came from the Maharaj of Travancore, including my uncle.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Princess. Thank you, Shri Abhi Shukla ji, for enlightening us on the fundamental, the basic concepts about the forms, the formless, the seen and the unseen, the Sakar and Nirakar, and taking us to the different topics and also areas of studies, and also assuring the full support by your I should say the committee, or not. It's not just a committee. I think it's a more wider. You have more power in your hands. So I thank Dr. Geeta not only for introducing to the princess, but also developing the concept, taking it forward. She did a lot of work for organizing this series, and I thank Shri Ashok Pradhanji, who is always a force behind us working at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. We never feel that it is an office. It's for or for all of us. Shashi Prabhaji is there, Professor Om Vikas ji is there. They will agree that when we are in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, we feel that we are at home, not at office. So we are very informal, getting inspiration and all kinds of support from him. So I thank him very much. Professor Shashi Prabha Kumar ji, Professor Om Vikas ji, Ganesh. Thank
And
you.
my special thank Dr. Sachi Prabha.
Ji. So I thank you, the audience that has joined us for this journey taken by the princess to the southernmost part of India, and all others who have joined us. One line about apologizing that I'm sorry, princess, that a wrong name was mentioned in the beginning. I really please excuse us. We are, a few things are going on in such a hurry that something
That
goes wrong.
happens. That
Please
happens.
excuse us. So many scholars and many institutions, many organizations, many people individual and organizational level are working for the resurgent India, and they are all feeling, thousands and thousands of people are feeling that yes, the time has come for a revival. So the point is that we need a collective approach. Vayankara, not ahankara. Vayamkara. If we work together, yes, sure, there will be a revival. Sangachadvam, samvadadvam, samvo manansi janatam. So with these words, I thank you all once again and hope to see you again for the next talk very soon in December. We'll fix up the time, the date, the talk, everything, the speaker, and we'll let you know soon. Thank you very much for all your cooperation. All those who helped me in organizing this, I'm thankful to them also.